is one of the richest countries in the world. It's also one of the most beautiful countries, by my standards anyway. We have stunning landscapes, vibrant cities, and countless natural wonders. Yet, many Canadians find it cheaper to leave the country than to exploit. Canadians are not irrational, for the most part. We're simply responding to incentives, culture, and time pressure. I can fly to Mexico for less than the cost to visit Banff from Toronto. So it's not about patriotism, it's about math, time, and certainty. Today we're unpacking why Canadians choose international travel over exploring their own backyard. And it's not just about the weather. Let's start with the numbers because when you actually break down the cost, the comparison is pretty shocking. Let's look at an example from Toronto to Banff for 4 days. Flights would be maybe $500 round trip, if you're lucky. Hotel in Banff, you would easily spend no less than $2,000. Rental car, maybe $400 because you need a car to get around. For context, Banff itself is about 2 hours away from Calgary Airport. Then meals, let's say $100 per day. That's $400 for 4 days. And then there's activities. There's Banff Gondola, you visit Lake Louise, you visit the hot springs, maybe even take a guided tour. Easily another $300. And for the total, we're looking around $3,600. And that's if we're being conservative. Let's look at another example. Toronto to Cancun, all inclusive for 4 days. Flights, accommodation, unlimited food, unlimited drinks, activities, entertainment, one package, $2,400. And this is even during peak period, so you may even find a cheaper price at other times. The interesting thing about international vacation packages is they have the advantage of bulk purchasing. The tour operators would negotiate rates with the airlines, with the hotels, and with the restaurants. So they buy in massive volume and they're able to pass down savings to you. There's also the competitive markets. Destinations like Mexico, the Dominican Republic, and Cuba are aggressively competing for Canadian tourists. And this competition drives down prices. And there's also the part of low operational costs abroad. Labor costs, building costs, taxes are comparatively lower. But the real advantage and why many choose these places instead is also in the budgeting certainty. With domestic travel within Canada, costs are unpredictable. Every meal is a decision. Every activity is a calculation. Every parking spot is an unexpected $25. I mean, even at most hotels, you still need to pay per day for parking. Meanwhile, with all-inclusive, you pay once, then you stop thinking about money. And that is a huge part of the appeal. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because this is not just about costs. It's also about psychology. If you spend $2,400 for a week in Banff, that still feels expensive. If you spend $2,400 for a week all-inclusive in Mexico, that feels like a deal. It's the same amount, but it gives totally different emotional response, and there are various reasons for this. Let's start with itemized versus bundled pricing. For a domestic trip in Canada, you see every charge separately. Your flight, $600. Hotel, $1,200. Rental car, $400. Meals, $400. Maybe even more. Activities, who knows? On the other hand, that Air Canada or Sun Week vacation package for $2,400 includes your flights, your hotel, your meals, your drinks, your activities. That feels comforting. Your brain processes this as a single purchase, not accumulated costs. And in fact, its bundled pricing would feel less painful, even if it's the same total cost. Nobody wants their vacation to feel like you're tracking expenses, but with domestic travel, it often does. Then there's what I would call comparative pricing and anchoring. When you search for Banff Hotel, you see $350 per night and think, that's insane for Canada. When you search for Mexico resorts, you see $2,200 all inclusive for an entire week, flights included. And then you compare it to what you would typically get domestically, and suddenly it feels like a bargain. So we anchor domestic prices against our everyday Canadian prices, which are already high. But we anchor international prices against getting out of the country, which feels totally worth it. And then there's the social aspects. If you post on Instagram, I spent $2,000 in a week in the Maritimes, you get minimal social media interaction. To be honest, not many people outside of Canada probably even know about the Maritimes. But if you post, I spent $2,000 in a week in Bali, kill the comments, the likes, the shares. The same money buys different social and psychological returns. So we're not just traveling for the experience, we're traveling for the story we get to tell. So the bottom line is, the same amount of money can have widely different perceived value. And that's why all-inclusive packages work so well. They hack our perception of value. But this is not just about flights. Canadian hotel prices are consistently higher than many international destinations, especially during peak season. Banff in summer, easily $300 to $500 per night for a decent hotel. Whistler in winter, $400 to $600 per night. PEI during peak season, $250 to $350 per night. Compare that to Mexico, or the Caribbean, or even parts of Europe, where you can get good accommodation for significantly less. And in Canada, we have limited budget hotel options. Hostels are very rare outside of major cities. Budget hotels exist, but they're not really abundant in tourist areas. And then there's meals. Restaurant prices in Canadian tourist destinations are high. Activities and attractions also add up fast. The Banff gondola costs $70 per adult. And then there's national park passes. Thankfully now we have the Canadian Strong Pass, so that's free. But there's guided tours, there's ski lift tickets, there's parking fees. You have to also tip on the already high base prices. Meanwhile, at an all-inclusive resort, all of this is covered. You eat, you drink, you're merry, you don't think about costs. And then there's the exchange rate factor. When the Canadian dollar is strong against certain currencies, international travel becomes even more attractive. Mexico, Southeast Asia, these destinations offer exceptional value when our dollar is favorable. Meanwhile, domestic prices will stay high regardless of exchange rates. So, the maths just makes sense. But here's the thing. This is not just about costs and pricing psychology. It's also about what vacation means to us as Canadians. There are cultural expectations that have been baked into how we think about travel. And international destinations meet those expectations better than domestic ones. One expectation is that vacation should equal escape, not logistics. So a real vacation means you're not planning every meal or activity or expense. You already have to think about what to eat when you're at home. You don't want to have to think about what to eat for each meal on vacation. Domestic travel in Canada, you're still in that planning mode. Where should we eat tonight? How much is parking? Should we book this store? Is it too expensive? How much should I tip the tour guide? How much should I tip at this restaurant? So even when exploring beautiful places, it still doesn't feel like escaping. You're still in Canada. It's the same currency, the same worries, the same mental space. True vacation feeling requires that psychological distance, not just physical distance. At an international all-inclusive, they deliver on this promise automatically. You arrive, you check in, you stop thinking. There's also the expectation where sun equals perceived value. Now, let's be honest, Canadians are desperate for warmth and sunshine, especially from November through March. A beach destination automatically feels like better value because it delivers something we can't get at home during those months: the sun and warm weather. Canadian destinations in the winter are beautiful, honestly. but they require bundling up, tolerating the harsh weather, and winter driving. Summer in Canada is gorgeous, splendid, spectacular, whatever adjective you can use. But you're competing for a short window, higher costs, and sometimes the weather may still be unpredictable. I went to PEI at the end of June last year, and I had to look for where to buy a jacket last minute in Charlottetown because of how cold and windy it was. But some destinations offer that guaranteed warmth and vitamin D. So the psychological payoff is, I'm getting something I can't get in Canada. Another expectation is Europe equals status signaling. There's that social hierarchy to vacation destinations. I went to Paris. It beats I went to Calgary. And honestly, Calgary is even more beautiful. I spent 2 weeks in Italy beats. I spent 2 weeks in Saskatchewan. No disrespect to anyone living in Saskatchewan. Europe especially carries that cultural cachet. The heart, the history, the sophistication. Your summer trip to Winnipeg doesn't have the same impressive factor in conversation. So we've been conditioned to view international travel as an achievement. Domestic travel as less than. And Instagram and social media amplify this. A European vacation post gets more engagement. So whether we admit it or not, part of vacation value is the story we get to tell afterwards. Another part to this is domestic trips feel postponable. Canada will always be there. The country is not going anywhere. That's what we tell ourselves. International destinations, on the other hand, feels very urgent. Who knows when I'll get back to Thailand? Domestic travel gets perpetually pushed to someday. It's that thing where we overvalue scarcity and novelty. Going to Newfoundland feels like something you can do anytime. It's just Newfoundland. It's over there, even though you never go. Going to Portugal feels time sensitive. It's special. It's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. So the result is Canadians book international trips now and then defer Canadian destinations indefinitely. Now you may be thinking, what really does Canada have to offer? A lot. A whole lot of things. If you've been on this channel for some time, you can tell that I'm so passionate about Canada travel. We have the stunning natural beauty, the Rockies, the Maritime coastlines, the Northern Lights, the Great Lakes. We have world-class cities. There's Montreal's culture, there's Vancouver's scenery, there's Toronto's diversity. We have unique Canadian experiences from coast to coast. There's a polar bears in Churchill, Manitoba. There's whale watching in Newfoundland. There's indigenous tourism across the country. And there are no language barriers as well. Well, maybe except in Quebec. There's no passport needed. Canada has so much to offer. But here's the problem. Canada's tourism industry has systemic issues that make it very hard to compete. There's high operational costs that gets passed directly to tourists. The same fees and taxes we talked about for flights, they affect hotels, restaurants, and attractions too. Then there's a very short tourism season in many regions. Outside of summer, many attractions close or drastically reduce hours. There's also the lack of budget infrastructure. There are limited hostels and budget hotel options outside of major cities. And then there's limited public transit between destinations. This one is a huge one. If you don't have a car, getting around Canada is expensive and difficult. There's also high costs. Apart from flight prices, exploring major Canadian tourist destinations is expensive. So, to put it very simply, Canadians vacation abroad instead of exploring Canada because it's cheaper, warmer, offers better perceived value, and meets our cultural expectations of what a real vacation should be. And we're not wrong for feeling this way. This is partly about pricing, partly about psychology, and partly about policy choices. So until domestic travel competes on simplicity and time, not just on prices, this pattern won't change. Because at the end of the day, vacation is more than seeing beautiful places. It's about feeling like you've actually escaped. For now, it's time to head back to Canada. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I post Canada-related travel content, travel guides, hotel reviews, and cost breakdown. And now I'm also looking at the economics behind travel and tourism in Canada. You may also want to check out this video here where I break down why domestic flights in Canada cost so much. Thanks for watching and see you soon.